Hello, in this video I'm going to show how I changed the seal on the swivel housing of my Land Rover Defender. I start by doing the usual stuff, chocking the wheels and pre-loosening the wheel nuts before I jack the vehicle up. Now the way I'm going to do this job is how I've seen people describe on the internet as I think the easy way or the quick way of replacing leaking swivel housing seals. With hindsight, I definitely should have done this job the right way. I don't think time-wise doing it the right way would have taken me any longer. I think when I decided to undertake this job, I panicked and I must have just had a little bit of tunnel vision. All I was really focused on was replacing this seal to stop this leak, not really focusing on the bigger picture. I am actually changing both seals, but this one is particularly bad, so this is the one I thought I'd do the video of. As you can see, that seal has been really leaking badly. Once I've got the wheel out of the way, the next job is to remove the brake caliper, and I start this by removing this bracket which is actually holding the brake pipe in place on the hub. Before removing the brake caliper, I remove the steering rod and the track rod, disconnect them from the hub. This allows me to spin the hub around or twist it from side to side to give me easier access to the brakes. Before I disconnect the track rod, I've just got to remove this bracket that's attached to the front differential. Now I've got easier access to the bolts that hold the caliper on. As you can imagine, these are very tight. These are a 12 pointed bolt, 13mm. I take my time and care undoing these bolts because I don't want any problems. Before removing these bolts completely, I take out the brake pads. This is pretty straightforward. When the bolts are removed and the caliper is free, I support it off this bracket with a bungee cord. This keeps it safe and out of the way. Once the caliper is hanging up out of the way, I replace the two bolts that were holding the bracket onto the hub. I just pinch these up hand tight. Now I've got to loosen all the bolts that are securing the hub to the axle. There are 7 in total, and they are 12 pointed headed bolts, if you like, and they are, I think I used a 15mm spanner on them. In my experience, using a 15mm spanner on my Defender is very unusual. Normally, I think I commonly use a 13, a 17 or 19, and occasionally a 10mm. So once I've loosened them all, I then start removing them one by one. Before I remove all of the bolts, I just get the jack and I put it under the hub just to take the strain as I remove the rest of the bolts completely. As I said, the jack is just supporting the hub. It's not actually taking any weight as such at this point. I'm just using it so that I can keep the shaft horizontal, I suppose, and no strain. Although I'm replacing the bolts, I don't want to strain anything. This is a particularly dirty job, and with the rain it doesn't really help. I've done this in the middle of July, and we've had a heat wave right up until now, and I wanted a cooler day to do the work, but I didn't really want the rain. In a couple of my other videos I've mentioned that I'm going to take a bit of a road trip later this year. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going around checking everything and sorting everything out on my Land Rover and being as prepared as possible. So once the drive shaft's disconnected from the differential, it's just a case of pulling it out. Now on the driver's side, the drive shaft is quite short, and it makes this job quite manageable. However, on this left hand side, the drive shaft is much longer. Now some people say that at this point you should get the hub and try and pop it into a wheel. Well, I'm telling you, this weighs so much I just don't want to really move it any further than I have to. After having a little bit of a clean up on this side of the hub, I start removing the bolts on the seal retaining ring. When all the bolts are removed from the ring, it's just a case of pulling it off and then removing the seal. The retaining ring's not going to be saved. I've got a new one along with the new seal. I bought kits for both sides, and in the kits you get obviously the rings and the seals and any associated gaskets. However, the only gasket that I did require on this was the gasket between the hub and the axle, and that was missing on both kits. So I had to order two of these gaskets, which are just like a paper gasket. I had to order two of these separately, and they took a further 3 days to get to me. The majority of this video is speeded up by 8 times. I do this because I think I work quite slowly, and if you are watching this at normal speed, you almost definitely would have fallen asleep by now. I don't know if you noticed there, but around the outer edge of the seal I put some silicone just as a precaution, and now here I am, I'm just tightening up all the bolts on the new ring. The ring can only go onto the hub one way, It has two like scallops in it which have to go in place, and these scallops, for your reference, are where the bolts go through to fix the calipers. Here I'm just cleaning up the flange on the axle, just removing bits and pieces of the old gasket. Once again, this gasket can only go on one way, and I just put a bit of grease on it so that it kind of sticks in position while I manoeuvre the hub onto the flange. When refitting the hub, I employ the services of the jack again, just to take the weight. As I said at the beginning of the video, I've watched a couple of other videos of people doing this, and they describe this as being the easy way of changing the seal. At this point, I can tell you, I don't think it was the easiest way. With hindsight, I would have preferred to strip down the whole hub assembly and made everything just that much lighter, because it's really difficult to get this shaft lined up, and perhaps it's just me, but I just found it was really awkward. Obviously I managed to do it, but it was by no means easy. Perhaps if there was another pair of hands available, two people might have been able to do it easier, but it's such a confined space, I can't see as two people would fit into the gap. Anyway, once it was fitted, I kept the jack under it. I fitted all new bolts with washers, and the job went quite well after that. Well, the fixing of the hub. All of the new bolts were supplied with blue Loctite already applied. So I do the bolts up in like a crisscross pattern initially, and then I go round and tighten them. They're supposed to be torqued down, but I couldn't get a torque wrench in there, so I had to double up on the wrenches, as it were, and do the bolts FT. Obviously in about 4 or 5 days I'll go around and double check all these bolts, because you never know, I might have missed something, or something might work loose. Here I'm preparing to fit the brake caliper back in place, and I've put copper slip where the bracket that holds the brake pipe in place. I've put that between the hub, if you like, and the bracket, so that in future it could easily be removed. It was a bit of a struggle to get it off earlier. Needless to say, these caliper bolts need to be torqued, and there's no problem getting a torque wrench in to tighten those up. The nut on the steering linkage needs to be torqued to the correct setting, and also the same with the track rod end. Now I've got to put the one-shot grease into the housing. I find this a very messy job, even with the specially shaped bags that it comes in, even if I cut off just the minimum off the end. There is no way I'm going to get that grease into the filling point, so I use a small funnel, and what I do, I put the funnel down into the filling point as far as I can, and then I kind of use my finger as like a hydraulic ram, if you like, and that way I can get it all into the hub without making a mess. Apart from on my hands, that is, and the gloves are easily disposed of. I torque down the wheel nuts to the required setting, and then I double check with a 2-foot breaker bar. So that's it, another job successfully done, and closer to the road trip. This job I thought was just going to take me a couple of hours. I was being a bit optimistic. It took me practically most of the day, and it was a struggle. The rain and the absolute mess of doing the job didn't really help. I think I spent more time cleaning my hands and trying to stay dry than I did actually doing the job. Although the end result was okay, I think this is a prime example of what not to do. I think in future I'll just do the job the right way. Anyway, all's well that ends well, and I'm really pleased with the end result. That's another step closer. My wife will be pleased. Look out, France, here we come.